Even if you don't think you do, you probably know ATGames. They make stuff like the flashbacks, like for example the Atari Flashbacks, the Sega Genesis Flashbacks, but their track record isn't as great as you might believe. Though they do produce all of these plug-and-play consoles with a bunch of classic games for about 20 bucks, it's still not always great for them. And why is that? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. Hi guys, I'm DPX, and I am also the in-depth detective. Welcome to the show with that same name. Today, on the in-depth detective, we look at what put ATGames on blast. And remember that title, by the way, for later. Let's get started, but before we do that, you know what to do. Be sure to like this video, subscribe if you're new, turn on notifications, and leave a comment, and you'll be a loyal subscriber. I'm sure the people who know about ATGames know this, but the emulation quality is poor. There's a lot of sound issues, graphic glitches, and even controller registration problems. Take, for example, their Sega Genesis Flashback console and compare the sound from Sonic the Hedgehog to the original Genesis version. The screen tearing on other consoles that I'll get into a bit later is also a huge issue, but there is a specific issue with the Genesis Flashback specifically that we're going to talk about. In the Genesis Flashback, and specifically the one that claims to have 80 total games on it, it really only had 40 actual Sega Genesis games on it. But what about the other 40 games, you may be asking? Well, they are referred to as bonus games. What these games are original games for the Genesis Flashback. They were not on the original Sega Genesis. Here's the problem though. All these games are either math games, solitaire, or clones of other games, like other simple games, or including one of which that is a clone of another game on this console. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that this didn't sit well with consumers, but it gets even worse. Possibly their biggest misstep. The ATGames Blast was a line of plug-and-play consoles that just simply came with an HDMI drive and a controller. Each of them have a different lineup of games on them. There are stuff like a Bandai Namco Flashback with games like Pac-Man and Galaga, an Activision Flashback with games like Pitfall, a Legends Flashback that included stuff like Space Invaders and Burger Time, and 3 Atari Flashbacks, one with Centipede on the cover, one with Pong on the cover, and one with Asteroids on the cover. They might not seem too bad. I mean, they actually seem pretty cool, and only for 20 bucks, how can you go wrong? Well, the review copies went out to reviewers, and they recommended it and loved it. However, when consumers got their hands on it, something wasn't right. It turned out that the reviewers were actually given a copy with different games. The reviewers got it with the arcade versions of the games, in which ran pretty well, but consumers got NES or Atari versions of the games, in which didn't run well on their respective blasts. Technically not completely different games, but you get the gist. This resulted in a lot of controversy, and mostly ruined ATGames' reputation. I feel the need to quickly mention this. You might have been hearing a lot of positive buzz when it comes to Sega's Sega Genesis Mini, as it has 42 games and they're all absolutely killer, no filler. However, what you might not have actually known was that ATGames was actually originally a part of this project. After they were announced to be, there was a lot of backlash, in which caused the Genesis Mini to actually get delayed and seemingly removed ATGames. Now, it's almost completely forgotten that they were even once a part of the Sega Genesis Mini in the first place. Well, it is what it is. With the bonus games and with the ATGames Blast controversy, ATGames sure has a bad track record. ATGames simply doesn't really have their shit together, kind of like other companies like EA, Activision, or Konami. But they are different. They are trying to appeal to the retro gaming audience, and it's not working as they keep releasing flop after flop. But I'm going to ask a question. Do you have an ATGames product? And if you do you like it? Let me know in the comments below and enter the poll. That'll be it for this episode of The In-Depth Detective. This will probably be the last episode of The In-Depth Detective before I leave for my hiatus, which I will announce in a couple days. So I put a Google form in the description below where you can enter in what you would like for the next In-Depth Detective. So yeah, be sure to like this video, comment, subscribe, vote in that Google poll, Google form, whatever, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.